Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradhari. Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradhari. Yashodanandana Bhajana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Bhajana Ranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Parivajikacharya Ashtotirtha Sri Srimad His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Parivajikacharya Ashtotirtha Sri Srimad His Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai. Ananda Koti Vaishnavinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Gauranga. Someone have a dime or something? This is loose. And it's going to be like this. It's just coming right down like this. But there's a little screw here, unless we have a screwdriver or something. See that? That's what we need. Sorry.
Swiss Army knife?
Might. Let's see what you got on there.
No, I mean,
Oh, no, that's too small. That's too small. Narayanam namaskritya Narang chaiva narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamadirayet. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is a very means of conquest, we should offer our respectful obeisances unto Narayan Rishi, the supermost human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author, and unto Srila Prabhupada, the translator, commentator, and our spiritual master. Nashta prayasha bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavatyuttama Shloke Bhakti Bhavati Naistiki. By regular attendance in classes on Srimad Bhagavatam and by rendering devotional service to the pure devotee, all that is inauspicious within the heart is destroyed almost to nil, and loving devotion to the Supreme Lord, who is glorified in transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
On this third day of November, 2025 in San Diego, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace, HG Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And we are in in Canto 9, Liberation, Chapter 4, Ambarish Maharaj offended by Durvasa Muni, text number 21. Evam sada karma kalapam atmanaha pare adiyagye bhagavati adhokshaje sarvatma bhavam vidadhan mahim imam tannishta viprabhita shashasa ha evam sada karma kalapamatmanah pade digyagye bhagavatya sarvatma bhavam vidadhan mahimimam tannishta viprabhitak shashasaha evam sada karma kalapamatmanah pade dhyagye bhagavatya sarvatma bhavam vidadhan mahimimam tannishta viprabhitak shasaha evam sada karma kalapamatmanah pade dhyagye bhagavatya sarvatma bhavam vidadhan mahimimam tannishta viprabhitak shasaha evam sada karma kalapamatmanah pade dhyagye bhagavatya dhokshaje sarvatma bhavam vidadhan mahimimam tannishta viprabhitak shasaha evam sada karma kalapamatmanah pade dhyagye bhagavatya dhokshaje sarvatma bhavam vidadhan mahimimam tannishta viprabhitak shasaha evam sada karma kalapamatmanah pade dhyagye bhagavatya dhokshaje sarvatma bhavam vidadhan mahimimam tannishta viprabhitak shasaha. Ladies, sorry, go ahead. Evam sada karma kalapamatmanah pade dhyagye bhagavatya dhokshaje sarvatma bhavam vidadhan mahimimam tannishta viprabhitak shasaha. Anyone online?
Evam sada karma kalapamatmana
Evam sada karma kalapamatmana
pare dhyagye bhagavatya hokshaje
pade dhyagye bhagavatya dhokshaje
Sarvatma bhavam vidadan mahimimam.
Sarvatma bhavam vidadhan mahimimam.
Tanishta vipra vihitasya saha.
Tanishta vipra vihitakshasasaha. Evam, thus, living a devotional life. Sada, always. Karma kalapam, the prescribed occupational duties as a Kshatriya king. Atmanaha, of himself personally, the head of the state. Pare, unto the supreme transcendence. Adiyagye, under the supreme proprietor, the supreme enjoyer. Bhagavati, unto the supreme personality of Godhead. Adhokshaje, excuse me, unto him who is beyond material sense perception. Sarva Atma Bhavam, all different varieties of devotional service. Vidadhat, executing, offering. Mahim, the planet Earth. Imam, this. Tatnishtha, who are faithful devotees of the Lord. Vipra, by such Brahmins. Abhihitaha, directed. Shashasa, ruled. Ha, in the past. Translation. In performing his prescribed duties as king, Maharaj Ambarish always offered the results of his royal activities to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, who is the enjoyer of everything and is beyond the perception of material senses. He certainly took advice from Brahmanas who were faithful devotees of the Lord, and thus he ruled the planet Earth without difficulty. Purport. As stated in the Bhagavad Gita 5.29, Bhoktaram yangatapasang sarvaloka maheshwaram suridang sarvabhutanam gyatva mang shantamrichati. People are very much anxious to live in peace and prosperity in this material world. And here in the Bhagavad Gita, the peace formula is given personally by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Everyone should understand that Krishna, Supreme Personality of Godhead, is the ultimate proprietor of all the planets and is therefore the enjoyer of all activities, political, social, cultural, religious, economic, and so on. The Lord has given perfect advice in the Bhagavad Gita, and Ambarish Maharaj, as the ideal executive head, ruled the entire world as a Vaishnav, taking advice from Vaishnav Brahmanas. The Shastras enjoin that even though a Brahmana may be well versed in the occupational Brahminical duties and may be very learned in Vedic knowledge, he cannot give advice as a guru until he is a Vaishnav. Shat karma nibano vipro mantra tanta visharadaha. A Vaishnavo guru nasyad Vaishnava kshapacho guru, which means a Brahman may be expert in the 6 activities of a Brahman, which are mentioned elsewhere. But if he's not a Vaishnav, he can't be a guru. But if a dog eater is a Vaishnav, is a pure Vaishnav, someone born as a dog eater is a Vaishnav, he can become a guru. Therefore, as indicated here by the words tan nishta viprabhitaha, Maharaj Ambarish took advice from Brahmanas who were pure devotees of the Lord. For ordinary Brahmanas, who are merely learned scholars or experts in performing ritualist ceremonies, are not competent to give advice. In modern times, there are legislative assemblies whose members are authorized to make laws for the welfare of the state. But according to this description of the kingdom of Maharaj Ambarish, the country or the world should be ruled by a chief executive whose advisors are all devotee Brahmanas. Such advisors or members of the legislative assembly should not be professional politicians, nor should they be selected by the ignorant public. Rather, they should be appointed by the king. When the king, the executive head of the state, is a devotee and he follows the instructions of devotee Brahmanas in ruling the country, everyone will be peaceful and prosperous. When the king and his advisors are perfect devotees, nothing can be wrong in the state. All the citizens should become devotees of the Lord, and then their good character will automatically follow. Yasyasti bhakti bhagavati kinchana sarvaya gunais tatta samasate suraha. Harama bhakta sukuto mahanguna manoratena sadidhamato bahihi. One who has unflinching devotion for the personality of Godhead has all the good qualities of the demigods. But one who is not a devotee of the Lord has only material qualifications that are of little value. This is because he is hovering on the mental plane and is certain to be attracted by the glaring material energy. Srimad Bhagavatam 5:18-12. Citizens under the guidance of a Krishna-conscious king will become devotees. And then there will be no need to enact new laws every day to reform the way of life in the state. If the citizens are trained to become devotees, they will automatically become peaceful and honest, and if they are guided by a devoted king advised by devotees, the state will not be in the material world, but in the spiritual world. All the states of the world should therefore follow the ideal of the rule of administration of Maharaj Ambarish, as described here. Om Jnana Timarandasya Jnanandana Shalakaya Chakshu Unmidatam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkest of ignorance, but my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisances unto him and all members of Sri Parampara. Now, before I expound on that, I'd like to just read the two previous verses, or actually three previous verses, which described just exactly what King Ambarish is doing. These verses are quoted twice, I believe, in the Bhagavad Gita. So they're really important. Maharaj Ambarish always engaged his mind in meditating upon the lotus feet of Krishna, his words in describing the glories of the Lord, his hands in cleansing the Lord's temple, and his ears in hearing the words spoken by Krishna or about Krishna. He engaged his eyes in seeing the deity of Krishna, Krishna's temples, and Krishna's places like Mathura and Vrindavan. He engaged his sense of touch in touching the bodies of the Lord's devotees. He engaged his sense of smell in smelling the fragrance of tulsi, I guess the tulsi manjaris offered to the Lord. And he engaged his tongue in tasting the Lord's prasadam. He engaged his legs in walking to the holy places and temples of the Lord, his head in bowing down before the Lord, and all his desires in serving the Lord 24 hours a day. Indeed, Maharaj Ambarish never desired anything for his own sense gratification. He engaged all his senses in devotional service in various engagements related to the Lord. This is the way to increase attachment for the Lord and be completely free from all material desires. So, the drama, of Ambarish, it's describing him as the ideal king. He's engaging all his facilities in serving Krishna. It says elsewhere here that previous verse, because of his devotion, he thought of the entire universe as being as insignificant as a piece of stone. In other words, he wasn't running the kingdom in order to increase his material wealth and enjoyment. Doesn't say anything about a big harem that he had or anything like that. He's a pure devotee in the role of a king. And a very important point made in the verses we chanted today, he took the advice of the pure Brahmin Vaishnavas. This was his counsel. And Prabhupada talks about the modern legislature and so forth. Well, they're not really, in America anyway, advisors. They're making laws. And the president is supposed to fulfill those laws. But there's no qualification that any of them have to be pure devotees. So it becomes a big mess. That's Kali Yuga personified. So this idea that the ideal Vaishnava, and we have other examples, of course, King Parikshit was that way, Yudhishthira. This time is this Bhishma Panchaka. He's getting ready to pass away. I think before this, for days and weeks, he was speaking on the bed of arrows. He's advising Yudhishthira how to run the kingdom. He's giving all of his experience and everything that he knows. So, and then these last 5 days, after this year, the Vaishnav calendar, it's only 4 days, even though it's a Panchaka. But so it will end on Tuesday, and with it will end the Damodar month. And that's the time after those 5 days when he actually left his body. And if you want to read about that, these wonderful prayers that he offered to Krishna. Krishna came there to be next to him. Arjuna was there. He got thirsty. Arjuna shot an arrow into the ground, and the Ganges water came up, and he could drink. It's a very wonderful section, chapter 9, first canto. And Bhishma Dev, who had taken this difficult vow of, a brahmacharya for life because his father wanted to marry a fisherman's woman, a daughter, and the daughter's father was hesitant because Bhishma Dev her sons would not be able to be the king because Bhishma Dev was already there, and he would be the king and like that. So Bhishma Dev said, no, I won't get married. I won't have children. That was his strong vow, which is difficult. And that gave him a lot of tejas too. He's a tremendous fighter, and he's takes a role. There's that point where Duryodhana comes to him because he was fighting on the other side of the Pandavas because he was getting maintenance from Duryodhana. So, and in the Sabha, he and the other elders didn't object when Draupadi was trying to be Visrobe because he felt he would break his relationship with Duryodhana and everything. So he was compromised to some degree, being on the other side. And Duryodhana came and accused him of not fighting with his full skill. He was a tremendous fighter. Even though he was older, he was like the most competent fighter on the battlefield. But Duryodhana accused him, and they said, okay, here's the deal. I will kill all the Pandavas tomorrow, you see. I promise. Unless Krishna breaks his promise and fights. Because he promised not to fight, right? Remember that when Duryodhana and Arjuna came and Krishna woke up? He was resting. And whoever he saw first had the right to ask him for the first boon. So I forget was it. I think he saw Arjuna first, and Arjuna had the choice of either taking Krishna's army or taking Krishna himself. So he said, "Well, I'll just take Krishna." So they said, "Okay, great deal. What am I going to do with Krishna? Just one guy." So he took the whole army with the elephants, the Akshauhini, so many Akshauhinis. So they were all on Duryodhana's side, and of course Krishna was on Arjuna's side, taking the role of the charioteer. So the result of that. So Bhishma Dev, he was on the other side, but he was a great devotee. He was a grandfather figure for the Pandavas. In fact, that was one of the reasons Arjuna didn't want to fight, because he might have to kill Bhishma Dev or his beloved guru, teacher Duryodhana. So that was there. So Bhishma Dev, he pulled out these 5 special arrows. He said each one of these is meant for one of the Pandavas, and they're very, very powerful, you see. So I'll use them tomorrow. So Duryodhana said, "Oh, let me hold on to him, because you might lose him or something might happen." So of course Krishna, he knew everything. He knew what was going on. So he told Arjuna at nighttime. They were kind of friends. Everyone became friends. It was amazing. So he went to Duryodhana's tent, I assume it was, and he asked him for a boon. He said, "Whatever you want. If you want me to have the kingdom now, we're not fighting, I'll give you that. But that would be very degrading. So Arjuna said, no, I don't want to do that. But I know you have these 5 arrows. Give me the 5 arrows." So they said, "Oh boy, But Bhishma Dev promised that if he didn't kill. If he didn't make Krishna break his promise, then he would be able to kill the Pandavas. You see, so he had Arjuna. He had wrecked his chariot, and Arjuna was at disadvantage, and he was ready to shoot him and kill him. So Krishna ran off, took a wheel of the chariot and made it into his chakra, and he started running toward Bhishma Dev. Now Bhishma Dev was shooting arrows at him. And some of the arrows were, injuring him. But Krishna took it as when lovers scratch each other. In other words, they had this rasa, And even though he was piercing his body, Krishna allowed that to happen. They didn't wreck the rasa. He was a great devotee of Krishna. And Krishna was always threatening him, and Bhishma said, "Please take me," But the point was that he wanted to save Arjuna, so he didn't, of course, kill him. And then a few days later, he gets shot through with arrows, But he has this blessing from his father, who he helped marry that fisherman woman, and that he would never have. His father was empowered in mystic power, that you don't have to leave your body until you want to. You have your power. So he's lying on his bed of arrows means he's shot through with all these arrows, and he's supported by the arrows. You can imagine, And it was weeks or months that he was instructing Yudhishthira. I forget how long it was, but it was a long time. Because Yudhishthira was heartbroken. He's a Vaishnava. He's a soft-hearted Vaishnava. And all these what Arjuna was foreseeing, all the men were killed, what's going to happen to their wives, and the animals, all these thousands of elephants and horses. So Yudhishthira was just heartbroken. And so Krishna, he could have instructed him, but he wanted Bhishma Dev to do it. So they went to where Bhishma was lying. And Bhishma Dev, he said, "Oh, my life is perfect. I can see Krishna now and leave my body." Offer these beautiful prayers. I'll give you a sample. 9th chapter, 1st canto. You should check them out. So this is, I think, the first one. Tribhavanakamanang tamadavanang vapakata gauravarambarang dadani vapalalakukulabhatananamjam vijayasake ratadastumena bhajya. Now, I don't have the actual translation memorized, but I know what it means. Tribhavanakamanang, he's most attractive within the three worlds. He's looking at Krishna. Krishna's come right before him. Kamanam tamalavanam. He has the blackish complexion of a tamal tree. Ravikata gora varambadang dadane vapar. On his body, he's wearing these silken garments that have the effulgence of the sun. Ravikata. Ravikata means the rays of the sun. Ravikata gora, golden, of course. Ravikata gora varambadang dadane vapar alakakulavatanarajam. And around his beautiful lotus face is this curly, it's framed by these curly blacks of one beautiful hair. Ravikata Gaurambarang Dadane Vapa Alaka Kurlavatananabjam Vijayasake. He's the friend of the victor. The victor is Arjuna. Vijay. The Vijay is Arjuna. And he's the friend of Arjuna. Vijayasake. Ratarastume Navadja. Let my attraction be drawn to him and not to be diverted to anyone else. So that's the theme of those prayers. And he even remembers the gopis. The dancing with the gopis, right on the battlefield. Laditaka Dibalasa Guhasa, Praniya Nirikshana Kalpato Namana, Kritamana Kritabacha Undadanda, Prakatamagan Kaliyatse Gopavad. So he's remembering how Krishna called them out with the flute, did the rasa dance, and then they went mad in separation when he disappeared with Radharani, and they started wandering the forest, and they were imitating his pastimes and all that. So he's remembering all this on the battlefield. So they're very beautiful prayers, and I looked up, when does he disappear? Because some people think that he disappeared after Bhishmashtami was done, on Bhishmashtami. That's the 8th day, of some other pastime. But no, I looked up. I'll be honest with you, I Googled it because they're right in. They know only even the Hindu questions, so it's Hindu. So anyway, they said no. Bhishmashtami is a day where his disappearance is commemorated, but it didn't happen on Bhishmashtami. It happened after these 5 days of Bhishma Panchaka, which this year, because of the vagaries of the Vaishnava calendar, is only 4 days. So that's Tuesday will be the last day. It will also be the last day of the month of Damodar. So anyway, just vagaries means the inconsistencies. It's 4 days for a Panchaka. That's 5 days. But because of it's just like you have. Ekadashi. I remember the most amazing one was Laguna Beach was a different Ekadashi day. We had the next day. There's a line. It was a line, maybe 10 miles or less between. But it just so happened that we had the next day like that. So sometimes that happens. Maybe vagaries is the wrong word, but the nature of the calendar. Okay, back to the theme of this. So what's going on here is that First of all, Ambarish's qualifications are mentioned in those two famous verses. Savaimana Kṛṣṇa Badada Vindyo. They're worth memorizing. So it was the description of pure devotion. All of his senses, he's engaged. Rishikesh, he's the master of the senses, and he's using his senses and his mind and everything, his wealth, in serving Krishna. When he smelled something, he tried to smell the fragrance of the flowers, and Tulsi Manjari is offered to Krishna. He's eating prasadam. And we'll see, of course, the drama comes when Durvasa Muni, who has this problem of being very envious, he's a great yogi with all these powers, but here's these Vaishnavas, like Ambarish, getting all this honor. Why is that? So he'll come and just before the Kadashi is meant to end, and Ambarish is a very strict follower of Kadashi, of course, and he wants to break it during the interval, that is given, like we give here. So Durvasa comes just before that, and of course he was traveling a long way, he wanted to take a bath, so he's taking a bath, but he purposely extended it into the period when it should be broken. So this gave Ambarish a real puzzle, what to do. So he consulted Brahmins, they didn't know what to do, so he suggested, okay, I'll just drink a little water, because that breaks a fast and doesn't break a fast. So who was going to get annoyed with someone? Because you're not supposed, if your guest comes, an honored guest, you're not supposed to take breakfast before him. And often, you invite him to breakfast. So, and he didn't want to offend Durvasa Muni by taking breakfast during the time. He said, okay, I'll drink some water. That's breaking and not breaking, But Durvasa knew that by his mystic powers, took that as a great offense, pulled a hair from his head, his mystic powers, and created a Kritya. I looked this up. There's a Kritya as a female demon made of fire, basically, And she was going toward Ambarish to burn him to ashes. And he didn't flinch. He just chanting Hare Krishna, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, said, this is Krishna's will, I'm ready to go. But the chakra, that Krishna had promised him that the chakra will be there to protect you earlier. So anyway, the chakra comes, annihilates the Kritya, goes after Durvasa, but Durvasa is not, so he was terrified, showing that he wasn't really a Vaishnava. It would be an honor to get killed by the chakra, But no, he started running and going, however he was doing, speeding. Chakra's right behind him. Goes to Shiva. Shiva says, what can I do? You got this chakra behind you. Goes to Brahma. I can't help you. Finally, he goes to Vishnu, and Vishnu says, I can't help you either. I'm under the control of my devotees. You got to go back down there to Ambarish and get his blessing. Of course, he did. But there's very important verses when Durvasa sees Vishnu. Vishnu was explaining how he comes under the control of those who love him sincerely, pure devotees. So now, just let's contemplate Prabhupada. His purport is all about how the ideal state should be ruled by a pure devotee. You see, who takes advice from pure Brahmins, who of course are Vaishnavas. All of that is part of this instruction here. And he contrasts that with the present state, What do we got? I'm not going to get into detail. You just have to see all the confusion, the horror, the dangers, the climate change. The climate change is a result of greed overcoming common sense, You convince yourself that it's not real when it's obviously real. And you don't listen to the scientists. Of course, they're not pure Vaishnavas, but they know about what's going on. And so we're endangering the whole world with this, the way it is. And that's so. And even though they get together, they say, okay, this happened years ago. They made promises, we'll reduce the carbon, emissions. They couldn't do it. So many were breaking it and failing. Who knows what's going to happen? I mean, since I've been here, the climate has definitely changed. Those who've lived here for some years, it's colder in winter, and it's colder in summer. We used to have a rainy season, December, January. We'd get regular rains. It would rain quite heavily sometimes. Let's see if it happens this year. I doubt it will. So we definitely don't have that now, and that's because it's Kali Yuga. It's Kali Yuga, So anyway, that's the point Prabhupada is making in this long purport, is that for there to be peace and prosperity in the world, there needs to be a purely Krishna conscious king who accepts advice from pure brahmanas, and the citizenry understand that the goal of their life is to progress spiritually. You see, because the king is showing that, the leaders are showing that. Very important verse in the Bhagavad Gita. Krishna is saying, if I didn't perform my, duties, that he took on as, king of the Yadus or leader of the Yadus and so forth, then people would follow my lead, and I would be responsible for the degradation of society. So that's what was discussed, how Lord Ram, he exiled Sita because it was a disturbance in the minds of the people, and he thought that was important to sacrifice his own marriage, as it were, because of that. Very, very detached. And what did Parikshit do? When he was cursed, he accepted it. He said, oh, this is a chance for me to go back to Godhead by hearing the Bhagavatam. And so because he did that, the Bhagavatam was manifest and is available for us. You see the wonderful service he did. So where do you find that kind of selflessness and tolerance in the leadership of the world? It's not there today, obviously. So Prabhupada, his effort, you see, that what he did was inconceivable. If someone had taken, observed, took notes of what he was doing at age 69, getting on this boat to try to spread this all over the world, a religion that would be as alien, he said, well, the chances are 1,000,000 to 1. But there were a certainty, because Prabhupada had the full backing of Krishna, his spiritual master, all of the parampara. And he was determined to try. That's what it can do. Try to do this impossible service for Krishna and for his spiritual master. And you can see when you analyze. I always like to point out, because I was around at that time. I didn't join. I wasn't one of the early birds, but just at the time, 1965, 66, when the hippie movement, if you will, was coming to its height. And you had all these guys who had taken LSD, and they thought they had seen God, or something. They became interested in that, but without any guidance, they just, it's just horrific. So enough of them who were competent, got attracted to Prabhupada, and it was so brilliant. He gave them instruction. Of course, he would give them lectures on Bhagavad Gita mostly, but the essence of the whole thing was the chanting and the prasadam, the program. What was the Sunday feast? The Sunday feast started there in 26th Avenue. Kirtan, right? Lecture. More kirtan, prasadam. And it was a perfect program. This is basically what we do now. And so those who were willing to try it, and this was the thing about that age. People were ready to experiment. Mostly they're ready to experiment with drugs, which is horrible, But they were ready to open themselves up, a certain number of them, to these exotic practices and exotic things, And many were misguided into a cul-de-sac. I always mention Amala Bhakta. I knew him before he became a devotee. He was my yoga teacher, my hatha yoga teacher. I think his name was Shiva Prem at that time, something like that. And I learned from him because I did some service for the ashram there. His guru wanted to print a Ramayana. So my service was taking the Ramayana that was already printed and copying it, and then it finally dawned on me, what is this? We're doing this, is like, this, is this legal? He's going to print that. But I did that for a few weeks. So I was known there. And then I left and went across town and joined another ashram, which had more young people on it. The east side was all middle-aged ladies trying to lose weight, no offense. And said, this wasn't me. But Amala Bhakta, he had some exposure to Bhakti before, And he started to doubt his own guru. And at that time, we had the big temple right across town in Manhattan, middle of Manhattan. His ashram was on the east side of Manhattan, very wealthy area. You go west 6 or 7 blocks, you get to our temple. And so he went there for a lecture, and he heard Vidyananda Maharaj speak. And he was a powerful speaker. You know, he was very, very potent preacher. So Amala immediately, woke up. And he said, I got to get out of that ashram. But he felt he had to sneak out in the middle of the night or they would try to stop him. So it's a whole... I have that story if you're interested. Then he came to LA. It's a funny story if you allow me to tell it. So those of you who know the LA Temple, there's a gift shop above the restaurant. Right? I don't know if you ever visit there. That gift shop used to be the place where they served out prasadam. There was no gift shop up there, and there was no restaurant. That was ashram before. Or maybe there was this little store down there. But so I was taking prasadam, and I said, whoa, there's Shiva Prem Swami. He was taking prasadam. And I said, oh, he must be here to try to steal our bhaktas. So I told Dhanavir Maharaj, who was in charge of it, watch out for this guy. You know, I think he's going to try to steal our bhaktas. I know him from New York. But it turns out he wanted to become a bhakta. And he did. He became Amala Bhakta Das. And then he became Amala Bhakta Swami eventually. So he came across, I was working on BTG, and he crossed the street and he came into my office, and he said, I'd like to tell you my story of how I became a devotee. And then you can write it up as an article. You know, so I just interviewed him. I don't know how, it was quite a long interview. And then I worked it up into an article. It's amazing, very dramatic. And if you're interested, I can send it to you. It's in the old BTGs. So, but Prabhupada is talking about the rulers. Who rules is so important. And this idea that there's like we have here in America, if you think about it, it was part of the British Empire, right? And it was ruled by King George. But King George wasn't a devotee. And it was all exploitation and I don't know if the slavery started under him. Maybe it did, but it was just a means, another means of getting more aggrandizement for the king, for the royalty, you know, and taxation without representation, you know, that whole thing. So anyway, there was a revolution, but it wasn't based on devotional principles. It was based on, hey, we want to be in charge, you know, and so forth. So anyway, I'm not going to get into all that. But without the guidance of a Krishna conscious king, you know, an absolute ruler, who is advised by learned Brahmins, you know, and Brahmin devotees, then it's sure to be an outpost for Kali, you know, because this is Kali Yuga, and that's what we have today. So this movement is meant to produce, of course, a revolution in the lives of those who take part in it, but also a revolution in world government, you know, how things. And that's why Prabhupada was so eager to establish Varnashram, because he wanted it to be a demonstration of how you can live very peacefully and nicely and happily, but depending on the earth and the cows and, you know, not on exploitation of others and horrible industries, you know, that just destroy the earth and end up with climate change and huge storms and things that we have now. So Prabhupada's movement was definitely multi-dimensional. You know, for each individual who joined it and took part, it's beneficial without question, you know. And Prabhupada stressed this. And when we have a community of devotees, we've established a Varnashram system, you know, and this way you can show an example of how society can be run in a Krishna conscious fashion. People can be happy and they can be prosperous, not exploitative, but living simple living, high thinking. That's the whole point. And we weren't able to do it in Gita Nagari, New Vrindavan perfectly. You know, there's so many things. But that's still the ideal, and some places are trying to actually do that. So that's what this is all. And Prabhupada will, I guarantee he will, as this canto goes on, that will come up again and again, how, you know, Ambarish, and of course Ambarish was so surrendered, everything that he did, he was doing his service, so he was protected. He was protected by Krishna. That's a very important part. Rakshishati Vishwasro is an element of surrender that Krishna will protect, right, and maintain. That's another one. So those are 6 symptoms of surrender. We should study them and try to adopt them as much as possible. Okay, it's 8:37. Is there any comment, question, objection? Yes?
We have so much knowledge about the material world and also the spiritual world. We have so much knowledge in the Vedas about the science of material nature, also the spiritual world. But at the time of death, immediately when you die, exactly what happens? Let's say this moment you were to die. Where are we? What exactly is happening? Is it dark? Is it light? It doesn't seem like, at least from my research, there doesn't seem to be a lot of information on that, which seems to be a crucial moment.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's the critical moment that we're all aiming to train for. And that's why in many places there's the injunction to try to remember Krishna at every moment. It's not easy because we're so habituated to forgetting and becoming interested in something else. And you can see, this is a perfect example, this Ambarish. You know, he heard whatever he heard, it was about Krishna, whatever he spoke was about Krishna, all the senses were engaged. So that's the test. And of course, we may not get a notice. You know, you can die very suddenly, so at any moment. So there's this verse I like to quote from a Kevalashtaka. I don't know if you're familiar with it, Madhava Puri. But it says, Nishvase nahi vishvaso kadadodho bhavishyati kirtane mata balyad hare namaiva kevalam. Remember that our final breath may come at any time, no matter if we're old and sick or in our youthful prime. So young and old alike should chant the name incessantly. The holy name of Shri Hari is surely all that be. So the idea is that if your whole life is dedicated to Krishna, and you're following and you're chanting and you're dedicating as much as you can of the fruits of your labor to the service of Krishna, then that relationship with Krishna is going to be the most prominent thing. And we have so much. Of course, Prabhupada gave us so much, and then we finished the Bhagavatam, and there were so many, and he gave us this book, Krishna Bhavanamrita, I think it's called, where he said, advanced devotees can read this book, and if you look at it, it's all very, Radha Krishna. It's very, advanced stuff. But he said this book is there. So the idea is, if your heart, is really purified, and you're thinking, like there's this one verse in the 11th canto, I think, Kayena Vacha Manasendriyava. It says, this is by the Yogendras. Whatever you do with your body, with your words, with your mind, with your senses, he has a whole list there. You think, you can declare it, this is an offering for Narayan. And if it really is, an offering to Krishna. I'm walking from point A to point B, okay, I'm on a mission, I'm going to do something for Krishna. So that's the aim that we're trying to achieve. And it might not be possible to achieve that kind of mentality in one lifetime. But we're assured that, okay, well, you can get next lifetime to do it. But that's the idea. Whenever that final point comes, now we've had so many examples. Somehow or other, I've been asked to sing Hare Krishna at a bunch of departures of devotees, at least a half a dozen, and that's the most auspicious thing. There's the hospital bed, and everyone's crowded into the room, or maybe it's a little room. I remember Radhanath Das had a fairly large room. It's hooked up to the, machines and everything. And he decided when he wanted to leave. He didn't have to leave. He didn't have to die then. He called me from the hospital. And Rajendranandana Prabhu, bless his heart, he would spend hours with him, reading to him and encouraging him, in the hospital bed. But it was, his situation was serious, and they told him, well, you don't have to die, you know, this is not fatal, but you'll have to be on that breathing machine, you know, 8 hours a day or something like that, you know, or more. So he said, forget it, you know, I'd rather leave, I'd rather go. And so he calls me up, he said, well, you know, can you come this Friday, you know, and he had called his mother to come, and I don't know if he had other relatives. And I said, no, I'll be on my way to Alachua. I have to leave in the morning. So I said, we'll do it on Thursday then. So I informed everybody. We all gathered up in his room and we started a kirtan. I distinctly remember Balaram, and I think his mother, Rohini, because he had given him a book in a parking lot, and gave him, you know, and started him on there. Right? Isn't it true? And then your mother, she said, oh, thank you so much. She was just expressing her gratitude at the time, you know. And Kirtan was going, you know, full force, and the things, you know, all these signs, you know, they flatted lined and everything, he's gone. Successful departure. And there were others like that too, I think, Ojasvi and several others. So that's the advantage of being in the movement. You may not be a pure devotee and everything, but if people are helping you to remember Krishna, the Shamali had a very auspicious departure. Parashakti's and Yamunapati's daughter grew up here. When I moved here, she was about 5. They were living across from where we had this little apartment down here. And she was, you know, just charming. Everybody loved her. And then she grew up, she learned to play the flute. She said, oh, wow, you know, and we played a little bit because I played the flute. And then she went to college in the UK, and I lost track of her. I didn't know what was going on. But then she went on the Polish tour with Indra Jumna Maharaj, you know. And this was so enlivening to her that she decided to take initiation after all these. She was in her 20s by then. And she did, and she came back, got married to Bhishma Dev, who had been here, you know, the president. And I would visit, they would, in Alachua, I would visit them. When I would visit Alachua, I would go, they would invite me to lunch, you know, and look at those. And then she got cancer, you know, it was a tragic thing. But she was right there in Alachua, all the devotees were there, she had friends all over the world, and I would call her a couple of times. I would share some Shastra with her. And Indra Jumna Swami was spending an hour a day. In Vrindavan, he calls her on the cell phone, you know. So that was a very successful departure. And that's what we can hope for if we stay amongst the association devotees. Okay, looks like Dharmaraj has something.
Well, he wanted you to describe what happens after the death, like entering a womb, or like Narada Muni's case, it says simultaneously he received a spiritual body immediately after. I think that's what he's asking.
Well, from personal experience, I couldn't tell you, and I'm not. but you know, you read about so many departures, and you see Krishna, and Krishna's welcoming you back. You know, it's not like a long travel to the spiritual world; it's instantaneous. You're training for it in your consciousness, and you're already experiencing so much, you know, and of Krishna's presence in your life. And if you're really pure, then Krishna just is there to greet you. You know, I don't think there's a long wait in between there.
Hare Krishna. What happens though if you don't go to the spiritual realm, either Vaikuntha or Goloka Vrindavan? If you
you get into another material womb.
Yeah, I think that's what they're about. Is that where you're going?
Well, Prabhupada says that death is like a sleep for 7 months. You know, seven lunar months. So it ends up to be 9 months. It's like a sleep, but no, you wake up, right? Any mother will tell you, oh, he's kicking now, right? He's awake, you know. If you're in a human body, right? If you're in another body, you got a long wait till you get back to the human body. But yeah, but I'll tell you, this is an interesting story. We had a couple here. We used to do programs at their house. I for the life of me, I can't remember their name. Balaram, you were here at the time. And the mother and the lady became pregnant, you know. So I told her about my Bhagavad Gita recitation. I said, you can have him hear that, you know, or he or she, you know. In other words, you can play that So she got it. I gave it to her, and she started playing. It was these old tapes we used to have, and she would play it regularly, So then the kid was born. I think it was a boy. She would bring him to the temple, And you know how it is. I would lead the kirtan a lot. I'm leading the kirtan, and she's carrying the boy, and he's hearing my voice, and he's all excited. She said, "Wow, that's." I don't know if he could chant any verses from that, But it's if you get into the womb, especially a human womb, then you're unconscious for some time. You're just unconscious. You're developing the body, And provided you don't, there's no abortion or anything, you wake up at 7 months, and there are of course the foods that the mother eats, it can be very important, so that it doesn't affect the development of the child. But it's so auspicious. If you don't go back to God in this life, we're promised that you'll pick up where you left off, right? Krishna says in the 6th chapter about trying Ashtanga yoga. You'll be born in a pious family or in a wealthy family, and also pious, so you don't have to worry about your maintenance so much, And you'll take off. In this practice of Krishna consciousness, no loss or diminution, and even a little advancement on this path protects one from the most fearful type of danger. Not dangerous type of fear. I'm sorry, it's fearful type of danger. Whenever Prabhupada quoted that verse and explained it, he's always talking about, protecting from the greatest danger, And the word for danger in Sanskrit is also bhayat. Bhaya is fear and danger, because one causes the other. Danger causes the fear. But in this context is the danger of losing the human form. So be born again in the devotee family and you complete your Krishna consciousness, go back to Godhead. That's about all I know on that, If I could remember the last time I took, my last birth, maybe I could tell you more about it. But there is, anyway, this is a little off the subject maybe, but it's close. There's an incredible thing on Dandavat site, so a year ago. Satyanandan Swami was giving a class, and it showed, but it was all about relating his own near-death experience, how he almost, he almost died in the operation. And so that was a fascinating thing. So that's worth looking up. I'll see if I can get the link for you. Okay. With that, I think we need to adjourn. Thank you for your attention. All glory to Srila Prabhupada. Hari Hari Bol. And you're all invited for tonight's class, if you'd like to come. Muffin Monday. I would say that Suresha is going to provide everyone with muffin, but then I'd be lying. I don't know if you do that. I don't want to do that. But I quote verses which are as sweet as muffins.